Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at Kratos defense and security solutions. It is time for another update, and it seems we have followed through in pushing to higher prices, but at the same time, since the previous video, we have also started a more significant correction within the smaller time frame. Now, today we'll be discussing about that, what to watch out for, the next levels of support, and the levels that would indicate a likely top would be in place. But before we go there, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And here on this chart, we are indeed dealing with basically a near all-time downtrend, and we have here tracked as an ABC structure, a potential wave of a larger correction. Now for this we have the area of resistance between the $32 all the way up to the $422 level. We have been tracking this as a potential impulse to the upside, where this could have been a wave 1 top, a wave 2 in a running flat correction, and then we would be looking for a third wave to unfold within this area. And if this really is to build and follow through within this interpretation, we would actually need to build an impulse within this wave 3. We haven't been focusing too much on the internal structures within this movement, within this push to the upside. Many interpretations are possible and they are not too relevant at the moment. We will get better indications as to what type of pattern really is building here once we actually complete the internal structure within this area, which could be coming sooner than we may think. Now, in the previous video, we mentioned a couple of key levels to watch out for in terms of resistance. Firstly, we have here the 61.8% retracement at the $145 level. Then we have next this structural resistance that goes all the way up to the 180 plus dollar level, yeah, around that area anyway. Now, do we need to stop at any of these? Well, no, but it is rather likely that even if we don't form a major top within these structures, within these levels, we might actually get a slowdown before continuing to even higher prices. And no guarantee that we will actually get to any of them. Now, I believe at least to those 61.8% retracement at the $145 level, it is very likely, but that is only available as long as we hold the internal levels of support we will be tracking within this video. Now, in the smaller time frame, we have been tracking this structure primarily, where again we have been focusing on this area for a 1-2 and a third wave that would be yet to be complete. Within this structure, we could look for an even more significant top to form within this push to the upside, but I wouldn't consider that as an absolute need, and I will be tracking even further upside once we have this structure we are tracking within the white scenario complete. So our pattern suggests that we would have here a 1-2 setup, another 1-2 setup here, third, fourth, and the fifth. This would build our internal wave 3 to the upside. We could actually even remove this internal structure, yeah? Just for clarity, we have this as a third wave up, we have this as an impulse. We have then a wave 4 correction, we have retraced very nicely in a 3-wave pattern into the area of support. We have very well reacted to the 38.2% retracement and created this very nice movement, this very nice structure at the moment to the upside. And I was going to call it an impulse, but there is no guarantee as of yet. Now, what else do we have available? So it is also possible, as I was mentioning, to form a more significant top once we build this pattern to the upside, because it is certainly possible that we are not really building a third wave within this area where it would be an impulse at the very least, and that this may be building instead an ending diagonal. It is very much a play we should at least consider as possible, and yeah, for this we would have instead, and let me actually remove these other interpretation for a moment, but this would be a 1-2, third, fourth, and the fifth. In this case, we would be quite close to a significant top to be in place. Now, even within this interpretation, I would very likely still prefer another high to form before we actually bottom. Yeah, that would actually line up very well within another high into the 61.8% retracement, again at the $145 level, yeah, around that area. But even that is no guarantee, but we will of course have that highly relevant area of support. Now, we'll continue to track mainly this within the white interpretation, as that will be the first scenario to actually fail generally. Even if we extend higher within a pattern that could work out in the yellow scenario, we may be looking for another correction in wave 4 in the white interpretation, Whereas in the yellow scenario, we could be looking for a more significant top sooner rather than later. Now, to recap what we have been tracking in the previous video within this structure, we were looking for a double 1-2-1-2 setup. We were tracking this as an expanded flat correction in a wave 2, and we were looking for a third wave to unfold within this area. And I will actually even go ahead and label this on the chart right now, just to have the full picture, because I believe now we have the internal wave 3 complete. Yeah, that is a very realistic expectation, and we don't necessarily crowd the chart too much by adding this larger time frame count anymore. So assuming we have topped within this wave 3, which again, we don't need to have a top in place, but I believe it is highly likely, especially based on the proportions we already have formed within this wave 4 correction. So we haven't actually retraced into the area of support we were tracking internally in the previous videos. Yeah, we might have been building rather slightly different structures. Doesn't matter too much in the end. They weren't going to be areas of support for a trade setup. We were rather using the area as an indication, if broken, that a failure would likely settle in. Now, the area of support, the highly relevant area of support that I would watch for continuation higher at the moment would be here at the levels between the $116.7 all the way down to the $100 level. A break below the 50% retracement would be a very strong indication that this structure is going to fail. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will not be able to continue to build this fifth wave within the white interpretation, but this idea of an impulse will struggle very, very much to actually uphold its end and build the following waves to the upside, because below the 50% retracement, it would imply that we could still track an impulse where this could be a 1-2 setup. But from my experience, when we actually fail to hold such levels of support for a wave 4 correction, almost every single time it is due to a failure to create the impulse. It's not that we were instead within a wave 1 to the upside and we were within a wave 2 correction. We would generally fail to build the impulse and we would track a different pattern. This is not within the rules necessarily of Elliott Wave theory. This is just what I have been observing throughout the years, and yeah, it has proven useful to me more than a few times to actually look for invalidation for the idea of an impulse below the 50% retracement. I don't consider it as an absolute, but I would not be looking with high probabilities for the idea anymore. And for that reason, yeah, I'm still watching just this as a wave 4. Now, what happens if we actually break it? What will I look for? So as I was mentioning, it is possible to build here an ABC pattern within the yellow interpretation, within the idea of an ending diagonal. But I could also be building an ending diagonal here internally within the fifth wave, where this doesn't need to be the wave 1 up, this doesn't need to be an overshoot. I could be tracking instead a 1-2, a third wave that would have formed a significant top and a larger wave 4 correction. This is very much available to us, but it's not going to be a nice area of support to look for a position in my opinion, because the risk would be quite significant and the reward would not be as substantial. We would instead be looking for an ABC structure within a fifth wave of a fifth wave. That would be quite a weak structure, and I would be more comfortable sitting on the sidelines for that one personally. Now, for this correction in the wave 4, again, we have retraced perfectly into the 38.2% retracement. This is the ideal target for the wave 4. But yeah, it seems the correction was just not done yet, and we might actually even have an initial 5-wave move to the downside within this area. I wouldn't look too much into the internal count, but yeah, it does seem a realistic possibility, and in that case, we might even need to be rather prepared for a failure. I wouldn't call an early failure, to be honest, based just on an internal structure, especially within such a small time frame. And I recommend that you do this as well, and that you focus on the area of support for continuation higher rather than count. Yeah, this is actually quite good practice to focus mostly on the levels of support rather than the exact counts, because those do get distorted, those do morph, and we may see a bottom sooner than you may think, and I would be prepared for that. I would be prepared even at this point to have a more significant bottom in place. And to be honest, I won't even be looking into the internal structure within this area, because all I could see is 3 waves to the downside. I wouldn't consider them incomplete. I actually do think we shouldn't necessarily see additional lows within this wave. I would most likely consider it complete itself. Now, of course, if it forms an extension in something like a 1, 2, 1, 2, and then it extends within a third wave down, nothing really we can do about that. I suppose we could be looking for an area of resistance, but I wouldn't think too much of it personally, and I would still be watching once again the levels of support for continuation higher. And for anyone who didn't find it clear enough, I'm looking for continuation higher on this chart against the 50% retracement at the $99.9 level. Now, in terms of resistance, if you want to track that, we can have here the $113 level. Above that, I would expect a break of this idea of a potential internal 1-2 setup. But once again, I wouldn't look too much into it, even if we did have here an initial reaction to the first level of resistance. And I feel like a broken record at this point, but again, I'm just watching the levels of support for continuation higher. If we want a more generic area of resistance for, who knows, potentially a larger A, B, C structure, we could be watching instead the levels between the $116 all the way up to the $127.6, where a break above the 78.6% retracement would be a good indication to me that a more substantial bottom would already be in place and that we would be prepared to push in the next wave to the upside. But for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.